Hi guys, it's Drew here, and today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about healing with myths and legends and folklore, and a little bit about what's been happening in my life at the moment and where it's heading, or where I see it heading. Okay, so I haven't really made much of a effort, to be honest, to be on social media platforms. I really needed a great deal of me time supported by just reading and really not creating very much at all, sorting out a lot of stuff that's risen to the surface because wintertime is usually my shadow work time. It's my hardcore, like cracking shit open so that I know what I'm working with for the next year, like what the major themes of undercurrent are going to be. And that happened last year. Last year, it was mostly about being able to shine, come out of my shell, do things that I didn't think I could ever do, and really just show myself as a creative person, regardless of whether it was professional or not. And take the steps to, um, you know, chase after or really just enjoy the process of creating and meeting like minded people through whatever avenues that I could, and in turn, actually having a voice. Now, because I have started speaking up, started coming out of my shell a lot more. There is a lot of self pressure to do certain things sometimes. I'm definitely one of those people that can burn themselves out, but it wasn't necessarily a burnout per se of creativity. It was just a shift and a storm and a time of not creating, not even marking down my moon phases or anything. I sort of stopped halfway. A lot of stuff came up and around family, and I realized I hadn't really done much tarot at all. I made a video for Top Deck Tuesday, used that a few times, and then just stopped using tarot, stopped working with things. I just stopped. I really just needed that break. And what I find fascinating about healing, especially with mythology and gods and goddesses and being a pagan, is that when I stop and I don't do these things that sustain me, that keep me focused and grounded, or that connect me with my creativity and divinity, my life feels it feels like suffering. I notice the suffering more. That's not necessarily to say that I notice, that or start to go into victim mode. It's just that I notice that pain and suffering, and I see the whole world larger as an unhealed place. And it reminds me that it's very important to find ways that work for you, where you can heal and you can create and you can sustain and thrive and not just survive. And, um, some of the things that I've been going through at the moment have been digging up childhood memories. And I realize that, alongside healing and recovery has been coping. I probably used a manner of ways to cope before I found tarot, before I found my practice and my path. And those things have sort of made their way through my path. For example, when I was younger, I used to read a lot of mythology. And of course, when you're reading stuff as a child, you're reading it a little bit differently than you do as an adult. And so a lot of the stuff that I was reading, I forgot by the time I was an adult because it just goes everywhere. But I used to love mythology. I used to love fantasy. Arthurian legends I've mentioned before, Celtic myth. It was all undertones, and I escaped to those places. Yes, those are ways of coping with a lot of the violence and abuse that I was going through as a child and a teenager, and anger. Um, and at the same time, I really do feel like they held me together a lot, but they also helped me write my own myths. They helped me to put into perspective um, the pain and what I was going through alongside the joy. And that's what I found in a lot of the books that I was reading at that time. You know, medieval settings, knights in shining armor, and all that sort of stuff. But it was adventure, quest. And I think that sunk in. I think that really did sink in where, you know, there is magic in the mundane, there is mundane in the magic. So, and I like them. I love the merging of that. I loved how the physical and, you know, that just the world could be so inspired by magic and myth and legend and stories. And so growing up, that was a very healing experience to me. And when I was about 15 years old, 15, 16, all those things kind of got put on hold and got taken away, largely by a person. And I thought that they were taken, that those parts of myself were taken away. You know, years later, when I found my path again, I've started to work at collecting those pieces again and what those mean to me, and to expand on my awareness of mythology and folks and stories and lyrics, and poetry, and how it really plays a part in the healing process for me. At the moment, you know, like I said, taking that break away from this, um, it just made me realize that without those stories, without that connection to humanity and divinity, where you know, you do have those stories, you do have those myths, you do have those gods and goddesses and their associations and their sort of merging of the two above and below. Without that, it does feel cold. The healing process isn't as nourishing. And I'm not saying either that it's supposed to be completely nourishing. You do go through pain. Like, I go through pain a lot. Loss, death. There is a reason I have a death goddess as my matron goddess. And she has been helping me to understand that there are some things that I need to do by myself physically, without people, but that doesn't mean that I can't heal through stories, that I can't heal through her lessons or her workings or the workings of others who explore her, and find my own answers to these things. And so I was laying there doing some knitting in my bed because it's like nearly 4 o'clock in the morning, and Bridget turned up. And I'm going to use a representation from the Dragonfey deck, because even though for some reason I feel like I want to shift this deck along all the time, it keeps coming back into my practice. I have both Morgan Le Fay and the Morrigan on my altar up there. Oh yeah, and I got a new dream catcher for my 2 years of being 2 years. 2 years of being sober would be nice. 2 months of sobriety. But Bridget, and she has been coming up a lot. She has been there since I started my practice. Every now and then she'll kind of move in, and I feel like it's weird because sometimes I feel very dedicated to the Morrigan and I don't sway. I just don't. But every now and again, especially when it comes to healing and creativity and creating a home and a safe space in myself and inner child work and outer child work, Bridget shows up. And so at the moment, I'm working through understanding some of the child abuse that happened to me. And so Bridget showed up again. And I was kind of wondering where to take my creativity, because I knew that I wanted to work on something or work with something, with an idea. But I knew that at this point in my life right now, I don't have the capacity or the energy to be doing something largely creative, like a large other fictional world, aside from the one I'm already working on top of doing this intense healing work, and recovery and all that sort of stuff. So I just put it out there, and I've been reading Big Magic as well by Elizabeth Gilbert, and I really love what she talks about in one of her chapters on motives, and how we don't have to create to save the world. We don't have to create to save people. Purely by creating, the people that are going to need to watch this video, for example, or read a blog post or do a spread that I present, I do these things for me. I do those things primarily for me first and foremost because that's what I need in my life. And I really love what she says about that because she writes for herself. And if it helps anyone, that's fine. But doing it the opposite way, trying to write something feels forced. And this is what I feel like with Bridget. She helps me to understand that I don't need to save everybody. It's been one of my biggest healing blocks. Doing it by myself, doing it silently, and also feeling like I need to basically just isolate myself and do things completely just, in that isolated space. So Bridget helps me to understand that. She helps me to understand where I'm going and what I need to heal. And for me, one of those things is saving people. It's no surprise that I love Supernatural. Supernatural is one of my favorite shows. It inspires a lot of my writing. It inspired a lot of my searching as a witch. It actually, I do believe it brought me to the path that I am on now because I just am enamored with mythology and stories. Again, I used to write fan fiction for Supernatural, and I really feel like that was a catalyst. Connecting with that sort of twisted dynamic of family and wanting to save people and save each other, and how that can be really destructive and it can also be really healing at the same time. And it's how you play that, how you do that, how you explore that, and how you speak your truth in that magical world, in this unknown world that really affects the turn of events that you choose. Like Supernatural has taught me about the choices that we make as human beings, and I do think that it comes back to the healing with the mythology because Supernatural is heavy with mythology. It's heavy with stories and lore, and I felt like a lot of the times I could relate, both to the characters themselves and the creatures as well, and so there's the whole, saving people is a family business. And I feel like my business has been, for the most part of my life, keeping my family together, keeping myself together, and basically saving people. Being a rescuer, being the hunter, being the one that's always on point. And it's had its both negative and positive. It's been neutral. It's been everything. It's had its darkest shadows and its most beautiful healing processes. Um, I'm angry now. I do get angry. I am frustrated as fuck right now with a lot of the stuff that I have to go through. But it's only through stories, it's only through my own journaling, it's only through poetry and reaching out to goddesses like Bridget and stories and myths and pantheons and connecting with other pagans and creators and creatives and collaborators that I feel like I can heal through these things. The days or weeks where I don't even bother, literally, just to connect with those beings, it feels like a disservice to myself, it feels like a disservice to the universe, and it feels like a disservice to the goddesses and gods who reach out to me, who are there and who will always be there. But it's also part of the healing process is intimacy. And through mythology, I have really discovered what intimacy means and how, as a human being, intimacy really does run through everything. The same with sexuality, it really does just run through every thread of life. And so I pulled out the healing card when I was looking at what is in my peripheral, what's in my vision, what's in my heart. And it's no surprise that I pulled out healing. And I really feel like the cosmos when I'm ready for it, opens me up to stories. And I've spoken before about how my connection with my current novel and hypersigils and sigils and sort of, you know, creating worlds and connecting with my higher being and my higher power, my guides, continuously through that story. And when I was writing the premise for an idea that I'm writing now, or thinking about doing, that Bridget was sort of talking to me about, I realized that again, um, themes of saving people still come up in my novels. And that's okay. Like, that is a preferred way of being able to work through what I need to work through. I find that, like, through mythology and through writing and storytelling, that I'm able to do the work that I need to do um, without always dragging myself through shit, putting myself through trauma, reliving trauma, things like that. I'm able to actually do it in a safe place, and writing has always provided that, just as reading has. And that's why I buy a lot of myth heavy decks and a lot of Celtic heavy decks. I think majority of my practice revolves around Celtic inspired fairy decks, fae, um, oracles. Like a couple I'm thinking about right now are Wisdom of Avalon, which I'm pulling out again to put next to my bed. What's another one? Camelot Oracle. The Chrysalis is very Celtic heavy. That's just my pantheon, that's my life. The stories sustain me. I connect with them every time I pull a card, and they have helped me heal things that I never imagined that I would ever be able to access. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I've been going through a lot of suicide thoughts, a lot of really depressive pain and loss and just grief work. And that's winter for me. Um, and by being able to take a step back, be calm, know that even when I am so fucking terribly alone, and I feel so terribly alone, and I feel like, not that I necessarily want to die, but that's just that I feel a death coming. And I do think, sometimes when I do feel like that in my depressive state, it's not necessarily me wanting to die, it's just knowing that parts of me need to be severed. And that comes up in a myriad of forms. But by taking a step back, having a breather, grabbing a book off my shelf, connecting to an archetype, connecting to a story, I self-soothe. That is how I self-soothe. That is how I bring myself back and go, you are a fucking divine being. And I say this to you guys, you are fucking divine beings. You deserve to tell your stories. You deserve to hear stories. You deserve to create, and you deserve to collaborate. And it brings me to that place. It reminds me that no matter how much pain I am going through, there are beings and creatures and support and guides and friends and people who have gone on quests, people who have endured the most horrific things in their lives, and they can still make something out of that suffering. And to understand the capacity of humanity is to understand that we do suffer sometimes. We do go through pain, we do have fears, we have a whole range of emotions and experiences. No one is safe from that. I really don't believe that no one is safe from having a dysfunctional childhood, because think of the society that we've grown up in. Um, does that mean that we are, dysfunctional as adults? Yes, we can be. A lot of us are. Does that mean that we have to die in order to sustain that? No, I don't think so. And that's where the healing through mythology comes in for me. So that's just a few thoughts on mythology, healing. I love tarot. I'm falling back in love with it again in a different way. And I do need that time. I need that time where I don't use it, where I don't talk about it, where I don't talk to you guys either. Where I just don't. I just don't do anything. I just completely sit with my anger and my fear and my ugliness and my shadows and my shit, and I just slowly work through that. I slowly journal, I slowly read, draw cards, talk to people, um, and really just tap into mythology. And the heart of mythology, I really believe, is love, is that quest to find purpose and fulfillment and divinity within oneself. And that's why I love this card. We are one. And Bridget always will remind me of this. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll be making some more videos like this in the future because I love talking to you guys and I love being raw and sharing my experiences. So have a great day or night, and I will talk to you later. Bye.